You don't miss it. Okay. Right, so mapping around with Python and Leaflet, for some of you it will work, for some of you it may not work, but anyway, try, especially if you're on a Mac, that should be easier to run this line in your terminal to install these things, the pip install IPython widgets, IPython Leaflet, and GeoPy. So these are 3 libraries. The widgets is kind of the supportive thing for interactive stuff. The leaflet is a mapping library that will help you put spin up maps, put dots on a map, and these kind of things. And GeoPy is, okay, that was not so smart, don't double click those cells. GeoPy is the library that does geocoding. And when I talk about geocoding, so what we mean is you have an address, you want the geocoordinates for this certain address or backwards, right? So you have some GPS coordinates and you say, okay, what is there? And then it will tell you this is this and that building and this street. And so we're gonna play with all of that. So first, as usually, you just basically import these libraries. So nothing crazy. Import IPython widgets, import IPython leaflet, and import, of course, pandas for just handling our data frames. Right? We're gonna have some kind of data frame to data. And the next step is, I'm gonna make it a bit bigger. Not too big. Can you see it? Is it more or less okay back in the... Yeah. Okay, so the next one, I just say map, and I specify a center for the map, which is some GPS coordinates, some longitude and latitude and longitude in that case, and I specify a zoom factor. And then when I execute this element, this object that has been created here, in the optimum case, we have a map here appearing. So, and you can do all the kind of nice things that you can do to maps, right? So you can zoom in, zoom out. So this is a map now running OpenStreetMap. You can, as I write here, use different base layers. And there is a bunch of these layers out there that people have been developing, that people have been including in their apps and whatever. And those are free to use for you, so you just do that. So this is really nice, right, so far, but not extremely informative and not extremely useful. So the next point is, okay, let's just do this a little bit later. You say, okay, I'd like to not only have this map, but I'd like to put, as I showed actually last time briefly, I'd like to add a marker, like something that's interesting for me on this map. Well, okay, then you just create a marker. And after you've imported all of these things, now you also have something that's called marker here as an object that you can run. So marker location, and then I say draggable false. If I said true, you could move this marker around on the map. I'm not really sure how useful that is, but we just create a marker. But as you see here, hey, you don't see a marker yet. It's not there. I was like, okay, why is it not there? Well, we have to add it as an additional layer. So the way how these maps work, you have a base layer, and this is just what you get, the nothingness, and then you have several layers for whatever you would like to put on top of the map. Well, and then you just stack them. So if we just then run cph.addLayer, and then we write in parentheses marker, ta-da, the marker appears. So, and this is the cool thing with the widget stuff. So it's like, you can interactively add and delete stuff. We could also say something like cph remove layer, and then to get rid of the marker, we just say marker. So as long as this thing marker exists in our environment as an object somewhere, and by the way, if you're confused what am I talking, what are these objects that we don't see them, you can always write, for example, who. I'm not sure why. And that will list all the kind of stuff that exists in your environment now, and this is very messy, but basically after importing all of these things, especially this one here, we import kind of everything that is in this ipyleaflet library. We could just say import marker, import map, import all of these things piece by piece, and you would do it if you were developing an app and you're cautious about not many things lying around, but just being sloppy here right now. So see, there is map and there is marker. They are here somewhere around in our environment. So as long as and then the marker without capital, maybe someone can see it. It must be somewhere there. Anyway, here it is, right? So as long as these things exist, we can use them here to add them and remove. So let's bring it back. Now it's back. Okay, so I just ran this cell. Okay, so you say, oh, this is nice to have it here. Why would I care for my map being in a notebook? Well, it's nice for if you're kind of delivering this notebook to someone, because you know when you compile it, this map, and you just put it up as a Jupyter notebook, and then you say, okay, I would like to show it to some friends. Like, how do they see this? Well, you can, just export your notebook file the way how it's looking now, and then you just go to nbviewer.jupyter.org, and then you paste an URL to where you upload. You, for example, put it on GitHub or you upload it somewhere, and then you put it in here, and then it creates will display this thing. This is one way of doing it, a very nerdy way of doing it. The other less nerdy way of doing it would be to say, okay, we can create just a self-sustained HTML file, right? With let's say we're gonna call it map SDS or something, and views not Z, but something I was playing around with before, views CPH. So we add this thing here for minimal embedding, and then we just say minimal embed, some kind of file name, and then what do we want to embed? Well, we want to embed this thing. Okay, and now it ran, and it's like, okay, this is mysterious, but what it did in your directory, where you have this notebook now lying, if you were executing this, and if you're not struggling with all these packaging things, I just gonna show this quickly. It's a bit easier. No, wait, where am I executing this thing right now? This is a good question, right? Back. Yeah, okay. So no, I know where it is. It's over here in this one, and teaching. Yeah, here, map SDS, I can download it. And when I download it in this messiness, I just open this thing and ta-da-da-dam, a map appears. You can then, right now it looks a bit odd, but you can of course, make it full page and all these things. Tweak these little, and you have a map, you can send it to your friends, and the whole data is embedded in the map. All your markers and points and whatever you do are there. Okay, but this is maybe not so data science. This is more kind of, I don't know. Wouldn't it be nice to describe these markers, right? Okay, well, and add some little imagery. Well, we can do that. We can create a pop-up. So these things, you click on there and something pops up. Well, we can do that very simply by first saying, okay, we create an empty pop-up, which is an HTML kind of part of this map. HTML meaning like the web page kind of code. And again, this works because we imported it here. We imported the IPython widget in HTML stuff. And then we say pop-up value, and here we just write some HTML code, and it's like, oh my god, now I also have to write HTML code. Well, it's not so scary. So we all have to look these things up, people that are not developers. So you just write something like The Little Mermaid, and then you write something like this, which is basically going to end you an image. And this image, like just on Wikipedia, I just copied the URL. So this here is just the address of where the image is lying, right? Display image, and this, I think this you could even let out. So we specify the value for the pop-up, and then we just say, okay, marker.popup will be the pop-up that we just specified here. So we run this, and if we go back here and click, ta-da, you have a little image and you have some kind of descriptions here. That's very nice, right? You can put things on a map and say, okay, now we spent 20 minutes putting a pop-up and a little marker on a absolutely not interesting map. We can be, I think, even less interesting. With I think it goes even worse. So yes. So I thought, okay, do we have some nice spatial data? And I don't know, I didn't find anything exciting, but I found this data from the Copenhagen municipality about all the public toilets that are having. So you can just, you can go on Open Data Denmark, and then you go, there is this portal of all the municipalities, and I just looked, okay, what data is there out there? So they had this file, this JSON file. And this is about JSON. We will learn much more about JSON later today, what JSON is and how JSON works, because this is the dominant file in all of web development. I would say this is the communication file, the way when your phone talks to Facebook, they send JSONs back and forth. So, and if we can intercept this communication, take out the JSONs, and figure out how we can manipulate them, then we actually won a lot of data. So anyway, you can download a so-called GeoJSON. So it's a JSON file that specifies certain geolocations from the web page there. And I put you a link here to this data. So let's open this one. In my case, it just lies in the directory. I think in your case, I just put it into data, in the data folder. So I would need to write here data / this thing. And you can be very I don't know, I'd say primitive, but it's like, you can do it very easy. You can just say, since you loaded up all this packaging from the ipyleaflet library, you can just write GeoJSON, and then you say data is equal to data, because this is how our variable is called. You can create this, and then you can say cph add layer GeoJSON. What will happen? Well, it will just plot all of these public bathrooms here as markers. Not so exciting, and they're just there. Sometimes it's nice to do this very, very quick and dirty. It's the worst joke in the morning. It wasn't not even intended. Okay, we removed this again. Oh, cph not defined. What? Cph data. Oh, see? Exciting. Okay, it's gone. Thanks. Gone. Yeah. I always knew I had some kind of letter problems when I was a kid. So, yeah. It's now getting apparent once I start working here. Like, oh. Okay, no. I think we can do better. And we can do better in a way that we can be a bit more specific about creating our markers on the map. So what we can do is we can actually import this JSON file. Let's first look like actually how does this data look, what we loaded up. So I opened something here without telling you how I open it. I said just, okay, open the toilet file, and then I passed it to something which is called JSON, the .load. So JSON is this library that will read our JSON file and make it for us workable. So we can deal with this. And let's just inspect quickly what this data looks like. So when we open it, you see it looks kind of, what does it remind you of?
Some kind of data set.
I mean, it is a data set, sure, but it's like, what is this data? This data. Okay, we can, I mean, if we are not sure, what we can always do is write type and figure out what it, and it's a dict. So it's a dictionary, actually. Do you remember last time we had dictionaries when we were using mappings on Friday? We map like certain numbers to certain categories or certain categories to certain integers, or actually floats when we were looking at the stop durations. So this is a dictionary. And dictionaries, as we had it last time, have keys, right? So we can write dict data keys and say, okay, cool. It has a type, a total features key, and features and CRS. I have no idea what CRS is. Well, let's have a look. So unfortunately, on dictionaries, you cannot do dot notation, so you will have to write the square brackets and but life is hard. Okay, so type, it just says it's a feature collection. So this is not, and then it ends. So there's nothing more in there. Let's do the other features. So, oh wow, okay, you get, and you see, because here is a square bracket, you see, okay, we get a list. And this is the long one. So this is probably where the real data lies. Okay. Since this is a list, we can always say length for list for length. Just figure out, okay, 142. So we have a list of some kind of 142 elements lying around there. Okay, so this is probably our 142 public toilets in Copenhagen. Let's look how one of them looks. So we just write other square brackets and write index 0, right? Like we would on any dictionary. Okay, and we get again a dictionary. So what do we have? It's a bit of a, unfortunately I don't have anything to write, but the idea is, so basically you have a dictionary first, and then you have some kind of metadata, and then you have this key which is called features. And in this key features, you have a list which contains many other dictionaries. So like very nested, kind of like a tree. This is how JSON files work. So they are hierarchical structure. They are not like tables with rows and columns, but they are hierarchical. They are like trees. So there's your keys, which are kind of your branches, and then they go down further, and they have values. So, and then if you open this, you can see that the first one it has like something, it says a type, which is a feature, ID, toilet, TMF, KK.1. So they're very precise about their toilets over there. And it has some coordinates, right? And it says it's a multi-point, it has some geometry name and a locality, Nyhavn, okay? It has an address, and then it says like, okay, what's going on with this toilet? Well, it's like, toilet with people, some working there, and you can, come in if you are in a wheelchair, and all kinds of opening hours and all kinds of information, okay? And this kind of data, you can get a lot of it. So all public institutions publish these kind of things, not only about toilets, but also more serious things and infrastructure and all kinds of other stuff. And they publish it, of course, for operational reasons, right? So when they, because this is what lies back in their databases when they, process certain things, when they run some kind of, I don't know, processes that they have to run. And now with the so-called digitalization happening everywhere, we will see more and more of these things. So things getting standardized, and this will be certainly the format which they will be using. So just knowing a bit the ins and outs of that is nice. Why is this format really nice also? Why do they prefer it instead of, having a spreadsheet? Well, because this is something that, let's say you're developing an app for, I don't know, some kind of mapping app for the welcome to Copenhagen tourists, and then you have like toilets. Then just connecting such a JSON file to your app is super easy, right? And then for people to find the nearest something. So just bear this in mind. This is the way how the data is often organized these days. Okay, but that doesn't help us in terms of putting it on a map. What can we do? Well, we can say, since we know that for each individual bathroom, our data is here in data, and then in the features key, we can try to fiddle the data out. So what do we need? Well, we need, and we can try to put it, I mean, for us, the best way for us would be, of course, to put it somehow into a data frame, right? So like a table, and then we can work with it. So okay, give us for each row, take out the column for the longitude, latitude, put it on the map, maybe take out the address for a description. And this is exactly what we are doing here below. So we can create a list of the properties. So those are the interesting ones, right? Here. Maybe this first here, not so interesting, but here, these properties are interesting. Let's see, feature 0, and then properties. And this is why all of these getting data from the web is always fiddly. And it will be actually the same, by the way, in R or in Python. You always encounter these kind of things. So you have a little bit to explore how do these data types look like. See, so if we call this, then you just get a nice dictionary. No more nesting, no more dictionary within dictionary or some kind of. So you just have keys, right? All of this stuff, and then you have values. It's all the information that we need for the certain keys. Think about keys as your columns, and the information here as the stuff under the column in the each row. So now it would be really, really nice to have a list of those, right? So where every element has all these keys and all these values. Because if we have a list of dictionaries, we can just send it to pandas, and pandas will create a data frame. So the question is, how do we do it? Any ideas? I mean, it's further down in the notebook, but still feel free to come with suggestions. What would be an intuitive thing if you have, okay, so we have 142 entries in the data and then in the feature key, and then we need for them to figure out the properties. Well, we'll need to loop, right, through all of them, so we need to take each element from here and then somehow take from each element this. And in Python, you can do it very, very easily with something called a list comprehension, and I explained it here. So what you can do, you can write something like that. So you can start a list with square brackets, and then you write x properties. So give me the properties of x, where x is an unknown variable, for each unknown variable in this data features key, right? So for each element of the 142, take it out and then unpack the properties part of it. So it's a bit like a for loop, what the loop stuff that we've been doing before, but written very nicely in one line. And then it will return you, and you don't have to do this kind of, let's create a new list, let's take it out, let's put every time we loop through it, put it back into the list and all of these things. No, we just write it in one line because this is used so often, so they decided when they created Python to have these so-called list comprehensions. And once we have a nice list of dictionaries, we can just pass it to PD data frame. So let's do that. And maybe before that, let's do VC head. And there you go, right? So now we have a table with all of these things nicely put out. So we transformed, right? And it says which kind of design and all kind of different things. So now you know exactly what to do in Copenhagen when you're there and you're in big trouble. We can run something like this, and we have figured out, okay, all of the columns have been passed, so we have a nice data frame. So now it gets a bit trickier. Don't get scared. I wrote here, don't get scared. The next cell, so we will just now go through each row and put them on the map. So what do we do here? We say VC, WC dot iterRows, and iterRows will give you an iterator which will go through each row of this thing. So every time you say, this element next, it will give you a new line. of the data frame that you pass. This is so you can do things one by one. Okay, for each row we take, and then we say for x in this. So just take an element which we just randomly call x. We can also just for a toilet in whatever. Is okay, take first element and then latitude and then first element longitude. Why is it index 1 here? Because index 0 in this element will always contain the index of this. So these things, of course, they have some index, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they have the columns. So, and then we are not interested in the index, we are interested in the columns. So just so we say, okay, give me the latitude and longitude, and then we will write and then we initiate a message, which is our pop-up message, and we say the value of the message is the toilet locality, so it's kind of the description of where the toilet is located, and then the address. The BR here is called, it's a new line command in HTML. We just add it here. By the way, in Python, just you can put in strings and add them up. So you just write the toilet location. This is just like, you know, some text, and plus the BR will tell the thing, make a new line, plus the address. And then in the end we say, okay, C is, we create a new variable which is called C, and it is a circle. And then we say circle, location, radius, blah, 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 fill opacity, and the pop-up message is the method. So we create a circle, and then we append the circle to a circles list. So just a new clean list of circles. And then in the same time also we add the circle as a layer to the map. The reason why we do this part here is to be later very able to remove the circles again very easily. So we have like a list of stuff, we add them to the map, and then we can also say, okay, now remove all the circles. So as long as you hold them in a list, you can just say, take those circles all out. So let's run this, and it will do its job. And see now a little bit of an ugly color, but so you have all those little green circles here, and then if you click on them, you'll get the message that you passed. Okay? So, and if you wanted to remove them, you just call, where is it? Da-da-da. For C in circles, for each circle in our circles list, and then you say not M, but CPH, sorry, remove layer, and then the circle. Well, okay, so this is all of it, yeah.
For the loop function, you
yeah.
have like the x in the square brackets is 1, and
yeah.
that's the loop function, so it goes up, right?
No, the one, okay, sorry. So this one here, yeah. Let's deconstruct this. I mean, every time you see something big and scary like this thing, you should just try to deconstruct it and take this element. For example, let's take this and say, just write something for x in, and we just take, let's say, iteros 5 to not be overwhelmed, right? So we do it only 5 times. Print, no, not Python 2, x. Okay, we cannot, okay, you cannot do this. Okay. Well, let's do the ugly thing. Let's do this. So for each element in this, we just print out what this element, how it looks like. And you see, this is how they look like. So they are so-called tuples. So they're pairs of 2, where element 1 is this kind of 0, which is the index of our data frame. And element 2 is all the data that we have for each row. Right? This is how they will look like. And this is why we have to take index 1. If we did index 0, it will just always take this one. This is not useful. That's the only reason. So, but every time you see these big things, just try to fiddle them apart and try to figure out, okay, what's in there. You cannot do anything wrong.
So knowing this, we have to actually check before. Like, if you didn't know this beforehand, you would.
Yeah, if I didn't know that beforehand, and this is why it's you know, a bit like, okay, why is he doing this? And this is why I tell you now. So this is because of the index, because this iterrow thing, it will always return you both index and all the columns with the values. So, and if you're interested in the index, you can of course just write x0, and then you get the index, if something interesting is in the index. But in our case, nothing interesting is in the index, it's just like from 0 to something in index. So we do it this way. I mean, there's several ways of doing this. You could also do something like a map. You could do some kind of a lambda apply function. There are different things of doing it, but this is the most kind of deconstructed, which looks a little bit scary, but yeah. So far questions about that. We'll have another exercise